Hi, and thank you for listening to my project status presentation for my MGT 781 Applied Capstone class. My name is Samantha Loy, and for the next 20 or so minutes, I'll be walking you through my class project, the Recognition Refresh Project. So let's hop in. First, I'm going to quickly run you through the agenda for today, so letting you know what we're going to talk about. So we're going to start with an introduction, just catching you up on the relevant background information and giving you a bird's eye view of what the project's actually about. Then we'll go into that entry and contracting phase where I'll walk you through the main players in my project and our engagement agreement. Next, the real meat of the presentation and the literature review. It'll be spent synthesizing the research that I compiled around the topic of employee recognition and satisfaction and how it influenced my intervention design. Then we'll go to the organizational diagnosis, which outlines a study of my organization and our recognition practices. Then we're going to do some lessons learned. This section is going to focus mostly on the data that I gathered through my various instruments. And then we have the intervention design. This is my tentative plan for change. And then finally, the conclusion. So I'll walk you through my closing thoughts and some next steps. So let's jump in. Introduction. We're tackling declining satisfaction scores. Celebrate what you want to see more of. This is a quote that I saw from Tom Peters. He's an influential American author, consultant, and business speaker. He actually holds a PhD in organizational management and behavior from Stanford University. He's written a few books on the topic. He's definitely somebody in the field who's worth noting and worth quoting. But I saw this and I definitely thought that it pertained to what we're talking about today. Celebrate what you want to see more of. And that could be from leaders, that could be from peers. All around, recognition and acknowledgement is a huge piece of what makes a culture thrive. So first, I'm going to walk you through a timeline. There's a lot going on this slide, but I think it encapsulates where this idea and this project started off and where we are now. So the whole idea of this project started from these low scores that we were seeing in our organization for recognition satisfaction. So in May 24, and we'll talk more, I'll get into more about employee signal survey, but May 24, the results from the spring, these are done biannually, the spring survey were released, and we had really low scores in this recognition satisfaction area. We had a 68 out of 100. I was only able to see back this far, so a year ago, but they have been decreasing consistently. So coming out of that, I'm on something called a culture crew, and we take these results and we're supposed to implement different initiatives to try to boost them for the next half. So in September, that crew that I was on announced this new award that they were going to, be the inaugural quarterly awards for the Rolling Benjamins. And at the same time, I was in an organization development class. So I actually did my diagnosis on this group because I felt like there was some disconnect there. Come October, the next round of those surveys come out. They open up for people to take, and we open up submissions for those quarterly awards. November, we get the results back from those October surveys and down again, 66 now out of 100. So continuing to decline. And at this point, I've completed the diagnosis of that team and found that there was a lack of purpose and a lack of leadership. And what I found was nobody was actually looking at any of the results. It was just like, oh, scores are low. Let's think of something instead of really looking and getting more feedback from the team. So I kind of took that into January. We celebrated those award winners to like moderate enthusiasm. I don't know if that necessarily struck the chord we wanted to or like had the impact, which is what prompted me to start this project. So evaluating our recognition offerings, seeing if there were any gaps anywhere, and then ideating on ways to fill those gaps in ways that are impactful and not just any old thing. Then in February, as part of this class, and as I'll talk about in a little bit, I shared that menu of current recognition offerings. This is before I was able to assess anything or make any changes. It was basically just, I've collected everything that I know that exists. Here it is. Do with this what you will at this point, just making people aware. And now in April, the poll for the spring has opened again. And we're curious to see, because my culture crew, as we'll talk about in contracting and entry and contracting, um, are on board with this with me and helping me do all of this. We're excited to see if there's any change in that recognition satisfaction score now that we've talked about it and made people aware of what is available, just to see if that piece of the puzzle moves the needle at all. And then as we get into phase 2 and phase 3, which I'll talk about towards the end here, seeing if we can get those numbers to go up in the next fall 25 survey as well. So a lot there, but a good way to ground us. So employee signals results. It's biannual, so it happens twice a year, and it's a Microsoft run survey. It's very short, it's focused, it's supposed to generate insights, learning, and action to help employees thrive. We get this thing called a Thrive score, which I'll show you on the next slide as well. My organization, the Rolling Benjamins, has consistently seen this recognition satisfaction area as an area for improvement, which just means it's one of the lower scored opportunities. So I had, as part of my data set, I had access to the fall 24, and then I will have access coming up when we release the results that are open right now. So I'll be able to continue this project even after the class is done. So this is kind of what we get as a team when these results come out. You can see that 91% of people participated, which is great. There was 107 verbatims. None of those, though, were for recognition satisfaction. So you can see on the screen, I've highlighted it in red. It's one of the top opportunities that are our lowest scored category here. And if you look at the chart here, so versus MSA, which is our organization all up, Microsoft Advertising, we're below their level by 3, and we're down 2 from the previous year, like I said. It is not, you'll see some of the ones highlighted in blue are like high impact. So those scores in particular have a larger impact on that thriving score, which is a 74. But since this has been a continually declining area, and I'll talk about this in the entry and contracting, it's a big topic of concern for the larger global media sales team. So we'll get into that, but Rolling Benjamins is kind of like a microcosm of that. So if we can work on it in our small section, small area, and see what works, what doesn't, we can take those learnings and scale up and hopefully have a bigger impact across the org. So the recognition refresh project. The identified problem, low and consistently declining recognition satisfaction scores on those surveys. That's the problem. That's where this started. The aim to resolve the problem, we want to understand the role that recognition plays on our satisfaction. So like what we've got going on, what people can do, and assess the current offerings available and identify those gaps. So are people not feeling recognized because they're not being recognized in a way that's impactful to them? Are we missing opportunities? Do we have enough monetary awards? Do we have enough kudos and feedback available? What do those gaps look like? What does our actual menu look like? And then the goal is to increase that satisfaction score at the end of the day. We keep seeing it go down. So we'd like to be able to see a few points increase and consistently increase. So not just, hey, it's April and we did that thing where we showed everybody what's available and it went up a point, great, we're done. We want to make sure that we're consistently seeing that score go up. And this is the model I based it all off of. It's a moderated mediation model. So what we're seeing is the effect of recognition programs on employee satisfaction and how that works with motivation, trust, and performance. And we're also kind of looking in between here as well with some of these moderating variables about the preferences of recognition and how people like to be and give recognition. along with the team context. So this is all happening post COVID-19 pandemic. As you'll see later from the group that I surveyed, almost all are hybrid or fully remote. There's nobody in this group that goes into the office every day or goes into the office more than 3 days a week. So I do think that that plays a big role, and that is some of the research that I did was on virtual teams and the importance of building that team culture and that trust. And these are just some of the three data collection methods I use. Just want to call these out up front so you know where a lot of this is coming from. So we did 2 document reviews and one, I call it a supplemental survey. So we did the document review of those poll results. So it's confidential, so there's not a lot in here raw data wise. I was able to share like our overall summary there. So we're able to look at that from last fall, 2004, until this spring, which I don't have at the time of recording, but I will be able to look at it. We also did a program assessment, so I was able to go through all of the SharePoints and documents and PowerPoints and Teams channels that we have available and kind of compile all of that and assess it. And we'll talk more through that. And then I also had this supplemental survey that was just sent to the Rolling Benjamins team to talk a little bit more about their preferences and give any feedback that they might have. So contracting and entry and contracting. I keep saying that backwards. This is just the establishment of that agreement to engage for that planned intervention change. So these are the 4 things that I broke out how I was working through this. The purpose, like we talked about, was to systematically address and improve those recognition scores with the Rolling Benjamins and implement a research-based approach to employee recognition. So again, not like in the past where it was, hey, morale's down, throw a party, or I think we need more awards. This is looking at the data, sifting through, and really finding those nuggets of information that work with research that we've done on recognition to understand where those gaps are. And by utilizing both the quantitative and qualitative data that we talked about, aim to create a refreshed and dynamic menu of programs that meet the diverse needs and preferences of employees. So essentially, by the end, would love to have a menu that we can share in PowerPoint forms that we can share on all hands. It's quick and easy to digest. People can share it via email and refer back to it. You can save it. But somewhere where we can consistently update and share on these all hand calls to let people know what programs are available, when they're available, and how to submit for them. And then involve parties. So this actually took some recontracting because my original client, this was originally going to happen at the Global Media Sales, GMS, Global Media Sales level. But my contact for that, who I originally did this with, unfortunately had to go on a medical leave of absence. So I renegotiated, and Brian Valentini, who was originally my sponsor, then became my client, and his direct manager, Edwin Camargo, our sales director and M2, became the sponsor. I was still the OD practitioner, and my key stakeholders were my cultural crew IC volunteer team. So other individual contributors, ICs like myself, in my organization, Rolling Benjamins, that helped me with these things. Brian is actually the manager sponsor of the culture crew, so it was really nice working with him and having everything kind of link up really well so that we could share these updates with our team. The resources committed, there's no money, no monetary resources, but I did have access to that confidential employee signals data, different SharePoint documents, basically anything that I needed internally data-wise I had access to, and I obviously have access to all of Microsoft's products within that Office 365. So the Microsoft suite like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Teams, Outlook, Glint, which is what the survey is run through, and Stream, which is a recording platform and kind of like an in-house social media thing that we want to try to take advantage of. And then finally, roles and responsibilities. So each of the involved parties agreed to a set of responsibilities and deliverables, and the next slide is going to outline that for us. So again, here's the responsibilities. My client, Brian, providing feedback, support, and resources for the project. He's who I went to when I would hit roadblocks or would, need some other information. I, as the OD practitioner, led the project, facilitated feedback sessions, ran the surveys, provided updates to the team. And then my job will be to deliver those redesigned menu of recognition program offerings and present all of my findings on our next call. Ed was there to support. He actually took a lot of the conversations that we've been having on the Rolling Benjamins team and brought that to other M2s across GMI, I'm sorry, GMS, too many acronyms. So we were able to get valuable feedback from other teams and share what we're doing as well. And then the key stakeholders are those volunteers from the culture crew. They actively participated in the feedback. They've been doing brainstorming sessions with me. They've helped present, and part of their role will also be keeping up with that menu and presenting that and sharing out with their teams. Literature review is next. So this is a little meaty. I'm going to run through it with you, but it's just a summarization and synthesis of that research I talked about on the topic of employee recognition. It was really interesting to do, and I had a really good time doing it. But essentially, these are the areas that we're going to talk about. So the recognition types and preferences, the impact of recognition on employee satisfaction, the challenges and critiques that I found, through all these resources, the economic value of employee satisfaction. So aside from all the intrinsic stuff that we're going to talk about, like here's the thing that I know will get people at the very top interested, and then future implications for implementation. So let's jump in and start with recognition as a definition. When I'm talking about recognition in this context, I'm taking note from Brunn and Douglas in 2008, their research. It's the acknowledgement and appreciation of an employee's efforts, achievements, and behaviors within an organization. And there's two main types, formal and informal, both being essential for creating a positive work environment and boosting employee morale and satisfaction. So, formal recognition can include things like structured programs, like awards, ceremonies, accolades, those kind of things that are publicly celebrated to honor employees' contributions. Informal, on the other hand, can be more like gestures, verbal praise, thank you notes, personal acknowledgments. There's actually a study that I reference in the literature review for my report from O'Flannery et al. I think it was from the Harvard Business Review. Thank you cards, handwritten thank you cards, or notes from managers make a big impact. That's more of an informal. Both of them, though, are essential. And another resource they have on here, Montani et al., they highlight the significance of managerial and peer recognition, emphasizing their role in enhancing employee satisfaction and meaningfulness at work. So as we get into it, this is small, but I needed to put this in here. It's from that Brunn and Dugas article. This is a lot of what my menu is based off of here. So if you were to look at this recognition types and preferences, I really focused across the top here. This, let me see if I can get my highlighter to work. Yes. Existential recognition, or recognition of work practice, recognition of job dedication, and recognition of results. So these are kind of the four buckets that we talk about, and I'll talk about them in more detail on the next slide. But it also gives some really interesting viewpoints on like the interaction level. So depending on who you're talking to, whether it's somebody like a peer, social, somebody at the organizational level, so a manager, somebody higher, or somebody like, really, really high up leadership, like above me. These are all ways to show recognition and appreciation at those different levels for those different preferences. So it's a really cool matrix to refer back to, especially for me as we get the results back in May, this will be a great reference point for me to look and say, like, okay, so it's looking like we don't have a lot of recognition of job dedication, let's say. Um, and I'm noticing from my results of my supplemental survey that that's happening a lot on the manager level. So you can kind of look for that here and say, letters of recommendation, giving feedback, congratulating employees on doing a good job in difficult circumstances. So there's options here or ideas to give people. So this was a really interesting matrix that I found in that Brunn and Douglas article that a lot of this is based off of. So here's where I break the four out and how they impact what I talk about. So there's existential recognition, which is more like personal recognition. This is usually shown through like verbal or written praise, excuse me. And it's this informal public recognition. So you'll see on the menu of offerings when I assess things, those are the kind of phrases that I use. Next, in the red, we have recognition of work practice. This is more about how people work rather than who. So existential or personal recognition is more about like who that person is, what they bring to the table, their uniqueness about them. This is more about how they work. So the innovation and creative approaches to things. This is mostly shown as formal public recognition. So for us, it's something called perspectives. It's where you request feedback from somebody and they give you their perspective on working with you and how it is to work with you. Yellow, we have recognition of job dedication. This emphasizes the employee's commitment and dedication to their role and their responsibilities there. This is usually shown as non-monetary rewards, so this could be something like the quarterly awards that we just did, just showing recognition for showing up and being a good team player and going above and beyond. And then there's recognition of results. This one's a little bit more tangible. It has tangible outcomes. It's about achievements that you've had resulting in your efforts, such as goals that are hit, quotas hit, sales goals, projects, that have been successful based on metrics that you've set out. So this one's more monetary rewards. So this is like bonuses, salary increases, sales contests for us. So those are the four buckets that we worked with: informal public recognition, formal public recognition, non-monetary rewards, and monetary rewards. And this is all coming from that matrix from Brunn and Dugas, like I mentioned before. And don't worry, I have some other sources to go through. So aside from those types, the next piece that we talk about are these peer recognition programs and employee recognition programs. They're both recognition programs. They're both these formal things that are set up in companies, but PRPs, peer recognized recognition programs, sorry. This is more social, right? This is emphasizing those communal bonds. It's collaborative. It creates this really positive culture between peers. It strengthens interpersonal relationships and builds support, and it provides a sense of belonging and mutual respect. So this is more peer-to-peer, feeling like you're part of this team, feeling like you belong. ERPs, on the other hand, employee recognition programs, are typically more structured and formal. They involve managerial recognition, and this one kind of hits more of those non-monetary and monetary rewards pieces and probably some of that formal public recognition. They provide official validation and they incentivize high performance. So this one is less about the intrinsic, like feel good, feel part of a team, and this is more about feeling acknowledged and heard and seen and rewarded for your work. Together, though, when balanced effectively, they both contribute to that overall employee satisfaction and organizational success. And we see a lot, I saw a lot of this in that Brunn and Dugas, I can't say their name, Brunn and Dugas article, as well as Hancock from 24 and Montagna al. from 2020. And then we have the context of implementation. So what we were talking about with this like post-COVID world. Um, Musa et al. Actually explores the dynamics of virtual teams. So in a virtual team, trust is critical. And without that trust, an eroded trust, you just don't have that bond there. So people don't feel like they belong. Um, in virtual settings where face-to-face is limited, these recognition programs have to be tailored to foster trust and collaboration among team members. So you need this in those situations because it's almost artificially created for you. You don't have those water cooler moments as people used to talk about. There isn't as much grassroots or organic opportunities for people to give feedback. So in the virtual world, which my organization tends to be, especially being a global company, um, you need to have these moments and these opportunities for people to do this. Otherwise, there's no trust. And without trust, everything else kind of falls apart. Similarly, Swartwell in 24 argues that the emotional and social aspects of recognition are particularly significant in these more high stress professions. So, in the example that they give, it's nursing, but sales can also be considered high stress, probably for a different, not like saving lives, but it can be a very stressful environment. So you need to acknowledge not just the effort, but also people's dedication and job satisfaction, and a job well done. So acknowledgement of effort and dedication can lead to increased job satisfaction and reduced burnout. And then finally, these findings all suggest that recognition programs need to address both the professional and the personal, right? So we have to be able to say job well done, but also the way you did it and who you are and who you show up as at work is also important to that job well done. And then there's the impact of employee satisfaction, of recognition on employee satisfaction, forgive me. So studies by Bradler et al. From 2016, Montani et al. From 2020, Rusin and this is a tough one. I've been saying it wrong in my head, I think, for the last couple of weeks while I write, but since Dalla in 2025 collectively underscore the multifaceted impact of recognition on various aspects of employee well-being and organizational performance. All that means is that these different studies that they've done, which I have laid out here on the side, just show that recognition programs enhance individual satisfaction and motivation, and they contribute to cohesive and productive work environments. So Bradler et al. From 2016 did a field experiment where employees' productivity increased measurably when they received unexpected public praise. So these were two groups that they had studied, and one got feedback, unexpected feedback, and their productivity went through the roof, whereas the other didn't, and it didn't change much. The research highlighted in the Montani et al. Research, whether that recognition was formal or informal, it played a crucial role in fostering a sense of meaningfulness at work. So both of those contribute. The one's not better than the other, but having both is helpful. And then in the Rusin and Sensdala 2025 study, peer-to-peer recognition was identified as a key element in building strong interpersonal relationships and fostering trust among colleagues. And then we have the challenges and critiques. So these ERPs and PRPs are great on the surface, and I think that they are impactful and they have their place, but Hancock and Visser, in two separate 2024 studies, make the point that it could have counterintuitive repercussions if they're not balanced appropriately. Because if you have these employee recognition programs and people are using them just as a way to check boxes or just to, please the machine kind of thing, you start to lose personal autonomy. So yes, you're getting your recognition and you're checking your boxes, and maybe you're getting some rewards like your salary increase or a bonus, but you might be missing out on some of those more intrinsic value recognition pieces, and it erodes trust, it erodes morale. It could also create this negative culture of competition and favoritism. So it's having the adverse effect, right? People are taking them to extremes. And instead of using these as ways to acknowledge and show gratitude and show recognition and feel part of a team, people are using them inappropriately as like a roles and responsibilities checklist. They have to do these things. They're mandatory, which sometimes like perspectives at my company can feel like it's a mandatory thing that you have to do for your review twice a year, 3 times a year. And so it can kind of have this counter effect where it creates a negative atmosphere. So you really have to make sure that you're not over relying on these tools. Like as a motivation tool, it needs to purely be for recognition. Recognition, like the model that we talked about, recognition, increase positive recognition, increase trust, motivation, performance, and leads to better employee satisfaction. So an effective ERP should recognize diverse forms of contribution and not just the most visible achievements. So not something that's just results driven, but making sure that you're touching on that social and that human aspect as well. So after all of that, I also wanted to touch a little bit on the economic value of employee satisfaction. I think when you're talking to upper level and you're getting way above and so many degrees away from your direct manager at a company like Microsoft, you need to give it, the bottom line. So here there's a study by Shan and Tang in 2023 that actually looks at post-COVID-19 companies and those that invested in the recognition and the well-being of their employees saw all of these things on the side: reduced turnover rates, higher productivity, more engaged workforce. They attracted and retained top talent. They had higher levels of innovation, and they increased company value on the stock market. All great things. But in seriousness, when you're attracting and retaining top talent, you've got great people, you've got great, like I said, higher levels of motivation, more engaged, high productivity. But also when you're retaining, you're not spending more money on recruiting, on training, on, turnover rates, things like that. So that's wonderful. And it's really about almost like disaster proofing or like future proofing your workforce, because now it's saying that um, there's a strategic importance of maintaining high employee satisfaction as a cornerstone for organizational success. So companies that invest here tend to bounce back quicker after catastrophes like COVID-19. And now with things like, tariffs and different, pandemics, epidemics, things like that. I mean, we don't know what the future holds, but we do know that if you keep your employees happy, you will bounce back faster. You'll see less turnover, and you'll obviously see better numbers at the bottom line here, better margins, because you're saving money where it matters with your people. And then implications for future implementation. So these are the 3 things I took away at the end of my literature review that like are the need bees for any kind of intervention that I do. Rewards and recognition need to be inclusive and personalized. You need to acknowledge the unique contributions and preferences of employees, and you need to ensure that there's coverage across all those types from that matrix that we talked about so that people have that opportunity. And there might not be one preference per person. It might differ from those, levels that we talked about. So making sure that you're covered across as best you can on those. Balance mission and autonomy. So making sure, like we were saying with the challenges and critiques, making sure that there's a balance between, what the company needs from you and those PRPs and those ERPs, those employee recognition programs, making sure that they're available, but they're not totally dismissing autonomy. And then finally, the economic value, using that as a strategic advantage. You need to invest in ERPs to enhance both the employee well-being and the bottom line. And effective ERPs build resilient and engaged workforces capable of navigating economic challenges like we talked about. So now we're on to the organizational diagnosis. This is a study of my org, the Rolling Benjamins, and Microsoft's recognition offerings as a whole using the Whiteboard 6-box model. So this is from a textbook from my previous class, Bork and Newmar in 2017. This is what I use to kind of ask myself these questions and reflect on the actual analysis. And this is kind of where we netted out with that. So I looked at our purpose, the structure, relationships, leadership, the helpful mechanisms, so like our tools at Microsoft, and our different rewards. And I decided to focus on structure, leadership, and helpful mechanisms. These are the three that, after I went through them, seem to be the most disconnected from one another. So if you're looking at that previous slide, and like the idea of Weisberg's six-box model is to look at like what should be and what is. And the larger the gap between the two, the more work that you could do. So these three definitely had that for me. Um, And I broke them out, and they actually worked out well because each one of them fits into a phase. So in phase one, we talk about structure. There's an issue with the organization and branding of our recognition things. We've had a lot of restructures in the last 5 years where we've attained new companies and we've shifted names and leaders and branding and all kinds of things have changed. So a lot of the awards seem outdated or people know them by a different name. They're not sure where to find them. They've moved. So in the short term, excuse me, this quarter, calendar year 25 Q1, the focus was assessing those recognition programs based on accessibility. So how easy is it to find and to submit for and all of that, the scope. So how many people could win those awards or have, participate in that, and then preference. So do we have coverage across all those different preference types? Mainly the four that we talked about. And then feedback will be given in the form of a consolidated menu. So this part of the project has been completed. This was presented to the team to bring awareness. It's more of an awareness phase. The next two phases, helpful mechanisms, so using more of the Microsoft tools to provide recommendation. That's a midterm project, so that'll be happening currently now, Q2 through Q3. That's going to be really focused on survey feedback. So once we get the feedback from the survey that's currently out, we'll be able to look at that, compare it to the last survey and really the last 2 years of surveys to see if we move the needle at all. And coming out of that, we've asked teams, hey, give a little bit more feedback, give us some verbatims. Being able to look through that with the culture team through this lens of the literature review research that I've done, so through that matrix, and really pinpoint where those gaps are and create new offerings, new initiatives. Something that we've talked about is a peer-to-peer podcast type situation where we can use Stream, which is one of our most underused Teams applications, to let people give kudos to team members through video, because that's something that we don't have and we've gotten some feedback on. And then lastly, leadership. The big issue that we're having on this GMS, the Global Media Sales Team, which is the organization that Rolling Benjamins rolls up into, was that there's a disconnect with leadership. We have a new VP, vice president, who we don't know very well, hasn't really connected with us, has sent multiple emails that are supposed to be recognition focused from the wrong email signature. So it's had like her assistant signatures, which just kind of shows she's not really reading, she's not really sending it. Is this real? So working on that. So being able to take the learnings from phase 1 and 2, bubble that up to the larger GMS, which was my initial plan for this before we had to, reassess, and then hopefully have leadership start to join in these conversations and understand where those recognition gaps are as well. Lessons learned. So this is just piecing together the data. So all the research is done. Um, I'm going to walk you through some of the different data, including that supplemental survey that I distributed to just understand where the intervention piece is coming in. So again, these are the three: the employee signals results, which we've already talked about, and I won't get the new ones until May. The current assessment of those recognition offerings at Microsoft, and then the employee supplemental survey that I sent out. So this is the menu or the assessment that I did. And you can see here, these are all of the different recognition programs. Some of them are awards, some of them are email recognition shout outs, some of them are formal perspectives, like we were talking about, giving reviews on people, and then some of them are grassroots. This just shows which of the categories that we talked about that we're hitting, how often they are sent out, what the accessibility is here. So that was more about how to participate. So how easy it is to participate in those, whether that's having to, something like the Microsoft Awards is difficult. It's writing up full submissions for people, and the scope of that is few. So only a few people win that every year out of the entire Microsoft advertising, which is 2 levels up from my little org. So that goes through each one of those. So this is something that I am delivering to our culture crew to kind of look through to assess where some of those gaps might be based on the matrix I showed earlier. And this is just it by the numbers. So we do cover off on those 4 award categories. Most of our options are formal public recognition, followed by informal public recognition, monetary awards, and then non-monetary awards. We have a lot that are offered evergreen, so you can participate in them all year. And then second up from that is biannual, twice a year, only 1 quarterly award, and then there's 2 annual. A lot of them are available to everyone, so 5 of those awards, anybody can win, everybody can win. You can participate in that at any time. The rest are evenly split among few, some, and many. And then the ease of accessibility, nothing's very difficult, so that's good. Nothing hit that level. And most of them are very easy. So this is a good sign. We're starting at a good place, and it shows me that it's not the quality or the diversity of our programs. It's really just the accessibility and the branding of it and where people can find it and if people are aware of the offerings that we have. And lastly, these are the results from the supplemental survey that I sent out to the Rolling Benjamins team. A lot of this hasn't been used yet, but it will be used in phase 2 of my project, which will happen after we get the survey results back in May, so after this project is over. But this was a chance for my team to respond a little bit more detail than they are available or allowed to do on the employee signals survey. Employee signals is just like 1 question about employee recognition satisfaction, and you're able to give a verbatim. This let us ask people opinions, ask people to rank things, give suggestions. So this is a word cloud that people kind of gave us what words come to mind when they think of recognition. We had a negative favorability in terms of how satisfied people were with employee satisfaction and employee recognition right now. So interested to see how that changes as we go through our phases. This also shows how often you felt recognized within different areas of our organization. So whether that's your pod, our team, organization, global media sales in general, those kind of things. And we look at that from a couple different areas. So who we're getting feedback from, the preferences of feedback. So monetary was a big one, and career development opportunities actually popped out, which is interesting. We don't have a lot around that. So that's something I'll take to the team when we ideate on different initiatives. And then we ask people to rank different preferences from different people. So there might be difference in what you prefer from peers versus what you prefer from your manager versus leadership. So we wanted to understand that a little bit more deeply, how recognition affects how they feel at the organization, and then suggestions people had. So you can actually look at the all responses piece of this as well and see some of the verbatims. And then we asked for some demographic information. So what people's roles were, how long they've been here. So a lot of the people that responded to this have been here for more than 5 years. And like I said earlier in the presentation, 58% are hybrid, less than 3 days a week, and 41% are fully remote. And that's what makes up our team. So that piece about virtual teams and building trust in virtual teams is really important here. So next we get into the intervention design. So we're delivering on that data. And unfortunately, a lot of this, we broke it down to those three phases again. First phase we've talked about is done. We've compiled all of that information. I've assessed everything. Um, and we've shared that list. Now we're into this phase 2 and phase 3, which unfortunately won't be done by the time that the class is over, but I have such strong buy-in from my team and manager and sponsor and client and sponsor that we're going to continue working on this, which is really, really fun. So for phase 2, it's going to be creating that accessible menu of offerings that we can offer more broadly to everybody, preferably in a PowerPoint slide so it's easy to save and share across different teams. We want to identify gaps in the offerings from that survey, the survey results we just showed compared or in conjunction with the employee signals that will come out in May. And then deliver some new peer recognition programs to informally acknowledge efforts in grassroots efforts. So we had this idea of doing this like kind of podcast thing called PS, Product Solutions is also one of our team names. PS I Love You, where it's just a kudos chain, but it's all video based and using Stream, which is a Microsoft app in Teams. So we'll ideate a little bit more on that after we really go through that data from everybody and get some more input from other people, because that's an important piece of this as well. As I can't do it by myself. I can do the assessments and I can do those things, but when it comes to filling those gaps, I think the more perspectives that you bring in, the more rich that menu of offerings is going to be. And then phase 3, kind of what we talked about before with the leadership relationship, we want to present all of this to the larger team, right? So not just Rolling Benjamins, but to the GMS Global Media Sales All Up team, and then they can roll that up even further if need be. And from there, it's important to continue to touch base with people, conduct those roundtable interviews, maybe send out another supplemental survey with the same questions to see if anything's changed. But checking in with people outside of those employee signals times. So maybe, instead of waiting till that 6-month mark at October again, we said something out over the summer, just to check in with people and see where they are. And similar to phase 2, enlist other people to help. What ideas do people have? What do people want to see more of? From that quote at the beginning to, acknowledge more of what you want to see more of. That's what we need to do here. And then again, we will look at the results from the fall employee signal survey to see if there's been any change from year over year. This is phase 1. This is what we presented. This is what we had. I've included the phase 2, which is just a cleaned up version of that. That's a little bit easier to read and understand. That gives the information. It has that access and links column for people to be able to click and go directly to those things on their work computer, and eventually make this into maybe just a more aesthetically pleasing slide to be able to show, and even have like a SharePoint that you can actually find all of this on. And then finally, for the conclusions, my final thoughts and next steps. The recognition research project is about clarity and coverage, right? So we want to make sure that we cover off on those different preferences, especially those 4 that we talked about at the beginning, and be clear about what they are, where you can find them, and how they work. Awareness is a big piece of this, because after that diagnosis, we found that it's not a matter of our programs not working. It's a matter of people not knowing where to find them or what they are. The three-phase intervention plan takes place over the next 2 years, essentially, with the biannual employee surveys as those tent poles. So making sure that, those are an institution, right? So those happen every 6 months anyway. Um, and just continuously checking in and filling gaps where needed over the next 2 years to see if we can get those scores to rise. And the next steps would be to finalize that menu slide for sharing at future all hands meetings, review the April 2025 employee signal surveys results in May, and ideate on the new rolling Benjamin recognition initiatives with the culture crew members, and hopefully come up with something there that we can pilot within the next half. And I just leave with the quote that I opened up: celebrate what you want to see more of. Tom Peters gets it. You want to call out the things, positive reinforcement, call out what you want to see happening in your organization, and what great things you see in others that you want to see more in yourself as well. Um, so thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the discussion. I would love to answer them. Sorry, this is a little long. And then my reference slides are just at the end here that call out all of the different and great resources that I used throughout my research and building this project out. Thank you so much.